Welcome. So I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee on Wednesday, January 21st at 6:35 p.m. This is a quintuple board meeting, and we'll go around so everyone can call their boards to order. Wenham?
We'll call to order the Wenham Finance and Advisory Committee here at 6:30. Thank you.
Good evening. Calling to order the Wenham Select Board. Present this evening are Ben Timon, Gary Cheeseman, Deirdre Parati, and Peter Clay.
All right. Hamilton.
We do not have a quorum tonight, but Tom and Bill Olson are here to represent the Select Board.
Okay.
And FinCom does not have a quorum. Chris Wilson.
Okay. Chris, do you want to grab one of those mics just so that
We get plenty of mics on our.
we got a lot of mics? Great. Thank you. All right, and you guys are not expecting people this
That's correct. We are
waiting. Okay.
we're full house tonight.
Yep. These things happen. Okay. So our agenda is pretty straightforward. We're looking to have a presentation from all three entities regarding budget highlights, and then have a discussion on those proposed budgets. We have on the agenda, we have Wenham first. If everyone's good with that, we'll start with Wenham.
Yeah,
Yep.
Vinny's got the presentation.
Okay.
Jeff, Vinny's switching your slides.
What's that?
Vinny's gonna be switching your slides.
Okay. You want to start, you want to jump right in? What's that?
I think we're just going to do you want to do the budget presentation?
Yeah. No, it's fine, we'll do it from here.
Okay.
You can,
I'll stay here because I can't switch from up there.
all right, you can just go to, you can go to the next one, thanks, Vin. And so that slide that nobody can read up there is just the second page of your PDF in your hand. We didn't do anything too elaborate for this meeting. In the prior quintuple, we went through some of our challenges and things for FY27. I think we're all kind of on the same page with those. We have similar challenges this year in terms of healthcare, employee benefits, contractual obligations, and things like that. But what this page lays out on the left-hand side, we tried to give folks a picture of what our additional revenue is for FY27. And so you can see we're picking up about $500,000 of Proposition 2.5 growth, another $150,000 of new property growth for FY27 as an estimate. And then our local receipts, we're assuming are up about $234,000, $235,000. So what you can see there is we have about $925,000 of additional revenue for FY27. And on the second part of the slide here, on the right-hand side, is just a quick mock-up of our tax rate recap, which shows you, the town side budget, which is going up about $752,000, or 6.32%. And then below there, we're showing you the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District, both operation and debt for FY27, which is up about 9.18%, or just over $1.2 million for the year. And Essex Tech, which is really more of just a guess, assuming that we have the same number of students, and looking at last year's sort of operating growth at about 4.32%, we think that's a nominal increase of about $15,000 there, meaning that education is going up just over $1.2 million in total. Then the town also has a couple of different charges, the state assessments and offsets, charges for the MBTA and things like that, about $183,000, and then every year we set aside $200,000 for a assessor's overlay. So all that being said, we're looking at needing to raise an extra $27.9 million in taxes this year, which is just under a $2 million increase, or 7.67%. Then we start there looking at our revenue streams, our state aid and our local receipts, which are, roughly about $3.8 million, $3.9 million, and reduces the amount we need to raise through taxation to just under $24 million, $23,983,000. As you can see, down to the second to last line there, we can raise, our levy limit, including debt exclusions, is just under $23.2 million. So we are about $825,000 over the levy limit right now for both town and school operations and debt for FY27. And just as a way to back into that number, we've highlighted a couple of things. Our net amount of taxation has gone up $1.75 million from FY26 to FY27. And so if we look on the left side again, we reduced that increase by $925, and essentially that leaves us the number at the bottom there, $825,000 over the levy limit. And so that's where we stand right now. We have some plans to reduce things on the town side, and this does include the school budget for Hamilton Wenham up to date as we know it. So the original $235,000 reduction, and also the $91,000 reduction, the second reduction that was made. Vinny, if you want to flip to the next slide. And this slide was just showing you sort of our approach to how we're allocating this override amount of $825,000. And our approach was just looking at, and I should say first that when you talk about the levy limit, there's two parts, right? So there's the operating levy limit each year that gets calculated, and that's that Prop 2.5 number, the new growth number. But then in all towns, and Wenham probably more so than Hamilton, you also have exempt debt. And so for Wenham, all of the school debt is exempt. And so for the calculations you see on this page, we've removed exempt debt from the calculation because it's sort of irrelevant. The debt has been approved in the town, and if it goes up, it's a pre-approved levy limit exclusion. So really all we're focused on is the actual operating override. And so what we did here is really sort of we did sort of a goal seek in Excel. And we said, how much could each of the budgets go up, the town budget and then the Hamilton Wenham non-debt budget, how much could those go up from the prior fiscal year to get us to, no override, a zero over or under the levy limit. And our calculations came up with each of us could go up 4.56% for FY27. Now, we are at 6.55. The school is roughly at 9.25. So we obviously both have a ways to go. On the right side, you'll see there that the town needs to come up with about $232,000. And then the school would be about $592. Those add up to your $824,000 target. At this point, I don't know, even on the town side, that we would get down to the 232 in cuts that we would need to hit that target. And I don't imagine that it would be easy for the school to reduce the Wenham assessment by $592,000, because I'm assuming that would be roughly a $1.5 million of extra cuts at the district level. I will say that the town, we've discussed some plans to reduce things on the town side that would probably reduce our $232,000 overage to about $112,000, so roughly $120,000 reduction. But getting from that point, down to zero on our side would be challenging, and that's the challenge for the Finance Committee over the next few weeks. So that's a high-level look at Wenham. I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think most people kind of understand where we're at this point, and lots of work to do.
Thank you. People have questions? Oh, Vinny.
If you guys were going to try to get rid of the 232, do you know about when you would have that kind of decision?
I mean, honestly, Finn, I mean, probably not more than, 2 or 3 weeks, I would think. I mean, we have to sort of, get to the point where we're starting to put together a budget booklet and writing up FinCom reports and things. So I think it would be over the next 2 or 3 Finance Committee meetings that we would, close that gap if we can.
And I guess what I heard you say is that, and I know this is a very difficult conversation because I know you haven't made a lot of decisions yet, and we're in the same situation, and but what I heard you saying is that reducing that in total seems unlikely.
Yeah.
And so it seems likely, given that there would be some form of override required to get the services that the town of Wenham needs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're certainly, we have targeted, some services have been discussed in public meetings, so it's not a secret, but it would be public safety related reductions. And that gets us down to roughly the 122 plus a 1% townwide expense reduction. So taking all departments' expense lines and reducing them by 1%. And also the elimination of Pleasant Pond gatekeepers. It's a staffing that we staff 2 gatekeepers down there for 7 days a week over the summer to help with the parking and crowds. So that's kind of what we earmarked as.
Pleasant Pond is out already.
Yeah, so that's out in the 272.
Yeah, and it's out to 232. So that's the only real cut we've made so far.
All right, so that's okay. So that's out. So that's already out. So the other things minus that I said will get us down to the 120. The other things we've discussed or currently looking at are changing our funding methods from in a reoccurring operating budget to one-time expenditures, which is not maybe not a best financial practice, but it is discussions we've had that would remove it from the operating budget, but neither the FinCom or Select Board have weighed in one way or the other on that.
So can you tell me, I know that you haven't decided, but that's like using free cash, is that for a one-time expense? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the biggest reduction that we have proposed in the $120,000 reduction I had mentioned was one was sort of a 1% across the board reduction to all town expenditures, not wages, just expenditures, and the other was using approximately $85,000 of stabilization money to offset the large increase in trash collection this year. The other thing I think Steve was talking about is, we make an annual contribution to OPEB, which is going to be $120,000 this year. We could look at potentially using free cash to make that contribution this year rather than raising it from taxation. That would put us right at the levy limit, but sets the bad precedent of using one-time money for recurring expenses, as you know well from the E&D discussion. So, we'll have to evaluate that as we go.
So I want to point out that all the efforts that we've been talking about here are all going to be possibly addressing that $232,000, right? So it does not address that 592 number, right? And we have not come up with plans to somehow come up with another $600,000 of one-time funds out of stabilization or anything else to do that, right? So what that suggests to me that, given, as you said, it's unlikely that we're going to see $1.5 million reduction in the school budget, that, I'm expecting that we're going to be going into an override situation at the school board, and the question is whether or not we can pull levers to bring it down to the 592, as opposed to have some of the town add to it.
Other people have questions? Thank you. These are, thank you for that, and thank you for your work. These are hard. It's all hard. So, all hard. Anybody else have questions for Wenham? Okay. Hamilton?
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. Vinnie? I have more slides, but I'm not going to go over all of them. We'll probably page through a couple of them. There's a couple that I want to hit as high points. Wait till Vinnie gets this up.
Is he there?
He's hiding.
There he is. He's back there.
He's not really hiding.
I did not have line of sight there on that.
All right, thanks, Vinnie. So this is a bit of a stripped-down version of what I presented to the FinCom and the Select Board last night at our annual budget presentation meeting. Real quickly, just to go over, remind folks of budget conditions. Hamilton, we start with the budget goals and objectives. The intent is to absorb town anticipated budget drivers. This year, health insurance and trash, for instance, are large drivers of our budget. We do our best effort to avoid a Proposition 2.5 override. The Select Board did direct us to make some targeted operational changes to improve efficiency, stability, and as always, we follow our financial policies for free cash, general stabilization, capital stabilization, et cetera. Next slide, Vinnie. Some of the things that we've done this year to try to help us get back on track, the Select Board voted to regionalize emergency operations, and we're moving all of that to the Regional 911. We're recognizing, or we're anticipating a potential savings of up to $350,000 in the town budget this year for that. There are some continuing expenses that'll continue for a year or two while we make that transition, so we can't realize the entire savings from the loss of that department, but we're holding $350 in the budget. We got some potential special revenue from Gordon Conwell. These would be one-time revenues of $400,000 once the sale of the apartments is completed, and that would go into our free cash or to a special revenue account to be determined later, but that would be for one-time expenses. But the sale of the apartments brings to light the possibility to raise $350,000 a year in new tax revenue. It actually could be more than that once we know what the sale of the prices closes at, and we finished the assessment, but we're holding $350 in this first year budget. We also don't know exactly when the sale will finalize and close, and so we can't start charging taxes until they own it. So, and then we made a targeted reduction in the fire side. Many people know that our longtime fire chief, Ray Brunette, is retiring later this year. The deputy chief that we created a couple years ago will step up into that role, and we won't replace the deputy chief, so we're recognizing a $72,000 savings in that side. We're reducing essentially the fire side by one body. Our foreseeable increases that we're trying to account for within our budget here this year are some employee increases and step adjustments, mostly related to some of the targeted improvements and efficiencies that the Select Board asked us to undertake. Bigger hit for us are the health insurance increase of $288,000 and an increase in our collection, hauling, and disposal of trash at $259,000. Slightly smaller increases in the regional retirement and utilities. Some of the proposed improvements that we referenced earlier, because of the loss of our police reserves program, we're in danger of having unfilled shifts. So we're trying to hire a full-time police officer to cover the loss of 3 part-time reserve officers. We're trying to increase some hours for our assistant COA director so we can have more resources for our seniors. It's a well-used center, and
Can you say that again? I just couldn't hear you.
we're trying to increase hours for our assistant COA director. Okay. Right now that's a part-time position. It's only an increase of about 5. Council on Aging. Council on Aging. It's only 5 hours a week, but it's we think it'll bear a lot of fruit for providing services to the seniors. We've been asked to look into the possibility of adding a part-time communications and engagement services person, and as part of the transition away from 911, we're looking at adding at least 1 and potentially 1.5 people to man the desk in the old dispatch center, because a lot of folks still during business hours kind of come to the public safety building looking for help. So those are increased costs in the budget this year. Real quick highlight, nope, back to revenue. Yeah, real quick, I'm just going to hit the highlights here. We're anticipating, projecting $43,943,131 in revenue for the town of Hamilton in FY27. That's only a total increase of 2.39% over last year. On the expenditure side, you can skip that, Vinny. On the expenditure side, with all of the requests in, including what's currently been presented to us as the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District's assessment, we're looking at $45,695,163 in increases, and that's total for operating and capital. So let me go back. It's $44,829,000 for just operating expenditures, which is an increase of $2.67 million over the current year. This next, skip the, yeah, there we go. So this here, when we sat down to try to figure out how to, we knew this was going to be a difficult budget year, and we know we have to have lots of difficult decisions. We needed to figure out what we thought was, consistent with historical spend on the education side for the town of Hamilton, and what would be, legitimately, a fair way to look at it. And what we decided to do was look at the last several years. This only shows the last 3 years, but I'm very confident that if we looked back over the entire 7 years I've been here, this is fairly representative. You can see that over the last several years, roughly the average revenue spend for education equals about 60%, just under. 58, almost 59% for the Hamilton Regional School District, and just under 1% for the Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical School. So we didn't want to do anything that would get us to a point where we're under that goal. Next slide, Vinny. Oh, actually, go back to that slide real quick. The other thing I'd like to show is that, even though the average has been to give the town of Hamilton around 40.25%, we did go under that last year of the revenue that we took in last year. The town of Hamilton only spent 39%, and that was because we did some things similar to what Wenham discussed earlier. We used some one-time revenues to offset some recurring expenses, not in actually delivery of services, but in the area of our payment to the Essex Retirement Board and our unfunded liability to pensions. That is allowed under law, but it's not good budgeting principles. And we'd never really done it before, at least in my time here. And it's not sustainable. It's not something that we would look to do. We've seen a decrease in our free cash this year because of that. And that just continues to have a compounding impact going forward. Sorry, Vinny, next slide now. So by trying to take the approach of trying to spend 60% on schools and 40% on town, when you look at the budget outlook here, that gives us a target for the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District of, is this right? Am I reading this right? $27,521,513 and $486,994 for Essex North Shore. Based on the budget and average revenue, we're showing like a deficit on both of those budgets of $1.6 million for Hamilton Wenham and $61,000 for Essex North Shore. At this point, what we're trying to do is justify how we spend our money and explain to folks. We recognize the value that schools provide to the towns. We are not in any way suggesting that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District doesn't need more funds. But what we are saying is that based on historical spend for the town, we can live within the 40% that we've traditionally lived within to provide town services. We want to support the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District to get the funds you need. We'd like to see it more clearly defined what actually the final request is. I think Select Board and FinCom have not taken a vote, but they've indicated that they'd support an override for the schools, but we need to get a better picture of what the actual full number is. But at this point, the boards want us to focus on protecting town services because we're doing everything we can to do that. I think we can skip capital improvement plan and the other side, so that I think it's more important to talk about the operating budget. So I'm happy to take questions. Wendy's here to help if I stumble.
Great. Questions? I have a couple, but I want other people to.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add to the conversation, Joe, was that I think that we missed the slide because we sort of had an abridged version, but our percentage increase from FY26, FY27 was quite small, right? Because we were able to sort of have gives and takes, right? We gave up some things and we added some things, so we sort of creative to have that percentage increase.
There's been some speculation about the town's budget jumped up 5.5%. It's not really that much. When you take out the $550,000 that we put towards the unfunded pension liability last year, which we normally have never done, and that money stays in the general operating fund budget, we would have had a higher number last year. We kind of did that to try to help everybody. I understand.
No. I just want to make sure, like what I'm hearing you say, and everybody make sure I'm saying something accurate, but that there was a lot of discussion at this group last year about the school budget and us using we call it E&D, you all call it free cash, but it's essentially the same. That we and these whole groups knew what we were doing, and we discussed it, and it was supported that in order to prevent an override on the school side last year, we used about $2 million of our E&D budget, which did exactly what Joe just described.
Yep.
And it makes our increase look larger than it would have been had we not done that for one time. And it sounds to me, if I'm, again, step in if I'm not saying this right, that Wenham is saying that they actually did something similar last year in order, is that correct? You used some from free, did I hear that? And that Hamilton also used some free cash last year in an effort last year to not have overrides. Is that?
If you look at the, I know you don't have any more, but over the last couple of years, Wenham has done its best to stay under that levy limit. If you look at ours, we were actually $200,000 under the levy limit last year. So we have.
And can you talk right into the
Sure.
thing? I can hear you, but they probably can't
Right.
on
So
the, yeah.
we, Wenham in particular has been putting aside some money in anticipation of additional costs. So the last town meeting, we put hundreds of thousands of dollars into the stabilization fund, right? And we talked about the trash contract, and we talked about possibly releasing that this year to pay, to help offset some of the costs of the consolidated school in the first year when the debt service is usually the highest. So, we have been putting money into our OPEB, hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what we're required to do in order to make sure that we have a good financial position, right? So, no, it's not the case.
But that's not the, I mean, doing that is not the same as what I think the school, we talked about in terms of E&D, and it's not the same what Joe was just
Right,
talking about,
you're-
using
it's very
funds to-
different, right?
Right, that's
We
not
have-
in the operating
We all
budget.
have free
That's
cash
right.
in our budgets at the end of every year, right? You guys are calling it E&D, and we're calling it free cash.
Right.
It's kind of oversimplification.
Right, but you are saying you used it for things, but not for anything that was an operating budget, nothing that,
Not to my recollection,
okay.
but it's been.
All right, so I'm glad I asked, because that's.
I think Wenham, it's been
Sorry,
probably
I heard
5
the
years.
there was $85,000 that you were saying, that you were using,
You're
that
asking
was
about
kind of
this
like
year.
E&D?
That's in this current,
In the current budget, okay.
yeah, the
That's what I
upcoming,
heard.
right? But looking backwards, you don't have the same issue that I'm just talking about, where if you use money in FY '26 from free cash, then because that money wasn't raised from taxes in that current year, it was raised at some point, but
Right.
it's not raised in that current year, then it looks to the tax-paying citizens as if you're having
Right,
this
which
sort
is
of-
why we are hesitant to do
Correct.
it in FY
Absolutely,
'27.
and I think everyone here understands that. I'm just thinking of it's really confusing, and if any of members of the public are listening, I just want to make sure. So it sounds like that occurred, it definitely occurred in school budget, and it sounds like occurred in the Hamilton budget, and it sounds like I'm wrong, that it didn't happen last year in the Wenham budget.
It
The
just
last time it happened in Wenham, just declared as 2020.
Okay, so, good.
And the last time Hamilton did that before last year, was way before I was hired.
So,
Hadn't
I guess,
happened
so
in a
I
decade.
want to just, and then I will let other people talk, but I just want to make sure, like, full disclosure, he said, some people are saying 5.5%. That was me. I'm the one that said that. So I'm just looking at the Hamilton budget now, and I'm looking at, in FY26, your budget, the town side budget, 16,762,000. FY27 town side budget as its current, iteration of it, 17,687,000, and that's 5.5% increase. I fully understand what you are saying is that use of that free cash artificially makes that look higher than that increase. I fully understand it. It's true about our
Right,
percent
but
number
the difference,
as
let me
well.
just, the difference is that our budget last year went down by $500,000, and we took $500,000 of our budget to pay for the school, but, so we went from 17.2 and 25, sorry, we went from 72 and 25 to 16.7. So it's not like our budget went up by $500,000 and we used free cash to pay for it. We actually lowered our budget by using free cash, so it's a little different.
So it is different. So thank you. That's
Yeah.
helpful for me to understand,
understand,
right? Because I'm looking at FY26 to
Yeah.
FY27.
So our budget actually went down last year, so we're just going back up to where it went
You
down
went, in
to.
this your current year
Right.
budget is lower
Our current,
than
yeah,
FY.
but Vinny has this slide up right there, so that
I
illustrates
cannot
what.
see that, but
So if FY24 was $16.3 million for the town, in FY25 it was $17.2 million for the town, and in FY26 it was $16.7 million for the town. So in addition to using free cash to pay for the pension, and that's where that difference is, right?
okay,
So
I
we were able to put more money to pay for the schools because we took the $500,000 from free cash instead of taking it from the operating budget. That was what
so
allowed us to
that's
fully
helpful
fund it.
clarification. Like thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, the 5.5 is still, it's still a logical.
Right, it's still 5.5 because it's really 2.5 and 2. We took the 2.5 from last year, the 2.5 from this year.
But I
and
mean,
you get
in other
5,
words, it's
right.
still 5.5% higher than it was last year.
5.1, but yeah.
And that's
Right.
helpful for me to understand.
Right, but our proposal this year isn't much over what we spent in FY25. much at all.
I'm understanding that now. I'll stop. Other people have questions?
I'm looking at the, excuse me, the Wenham budget, the line item pension and benefits, which I guess in Wenham, we've included health insurance in that line, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't completely hear you.
The pension and benefits line in Wenham went up, projected 13.28%, and the health insurance is in that line, is that correct?
Yes, so that's a mixture of health and pension.
Okay, and then Hamilton, I guess, does it a little differently. They break out group health separately, am I reading this correctly? And you guys went up 23%?
Which page are you on?
Health insurance only, yes.
Page 4, under the presentation from Hamilton.
No, got it.
And page 2, under the presentation of Wenham. I'm just trying to get an apples-to-apples comparison on health insurance. What was the delta for us on health insurance?
And we do break it out, Jared. It's just in this, sort of,
Okay,
condensed
but
version.
did we go up 23% too on health insurance? I'm just,
No, we're roughly about 16% is what we're estimating for an increase to our budget for health insurance. And then, another, I think it's about 4-something is our pension increase for this year.
no, the pension should be the same for both towns.
No.
Well, no, within parameters, there is a census differential.
Yeah.
Okay, but my point I'm trying to get at is, who's paying more or less for health insurance, Hamilton or Wenham? And if there's a big difference, I'm just curious as to why there would be.
Our recent usage of health insurance, several employees went out, it puts us in a higher risk pool, so our percentage went up higher.
Because of your risk pool?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I just, sort of more of a 20,000-foot level question. So you guys have, Hamilton, Joe, you've explained your objective to stay within a formula, call it the 60-40 formula. and you sort of identified the objectives of the town and identified the problem as Hamilton sees it and trying to maintain a higher level of town services. But what's Hamilton's solution, I guess, is my question, because your conclusion is that what Hamilton presently seems willing to devote to the school budget would leave a $1.7 million or $1.69 million gap. And I think that everyone understands that it would really be untenable for the school budget to be cut to a level that would achieve that number. Would be something like $2.5 million, I think, if you factoring in the Wenham piece. That's not a solution. I think everyone would agree that's not a solution. So what is Hamilton's proposed solution? Is it to put the $1.69 million to its citizens as an override and try to, explain why that amount of money, from Hamilton's perspective, is needed for the schools, or just what is your proposal to deal with where you've left us today with this number?
So, more or less, yes. The idea would be, so I don't know if it's 1.76, 1.69. The school committee hasn't adopted its final budget, but when we get a bottom line budget. The school department determines what they believe they need. They present it to us, and we're supposed to try to pay it. So, using the 60-40 formula, we're trying to carve out a way to identify what is reasonable for the town to pay. And if it's over that, I absolutely think the school committee and the towns, it shouldn't just be on the school committee. I think the select board and the FinCom need to stand up and say they need the money, but it's not within our normal operating budget to provide that money. So we need to ask you to reach in your pockets. There needs to be conversations about what that number is. Is it structured as as options? Is it all or nothing? There's lots of time to have that conversation, but we need to map out how we're going to get there. And right now, the only option is to say, well, you haven't done enough to cut on your side too. Right now, we don't feel that way. We eliminated an entire department and we added tax revenue by bringing the Gordon Conwell apartments into the mix. That's all helpful to the schools and to the town. If I cut any more, we're cutting real bodies. And when you look at the current proposed assessment for the town of Hamilton, if we were to look at that as a 60-40 split on the deficit, we'd be having to cut $650,000 out of our budget. That's untenable. So we need a real conversation about what's the real number from the school committee, how do we present it to the voters. But being presented with that number, we have to look at it as what the town can afford. And if you want to provide town services, police, fire, DPW, trash pickup, snow removal, and have a good education, we have to draw a line somewhere. Historically, the town has spent 40% on town services.
Right. Given that all 5 boards here, the purpose of us being here is trying to reason together, work together to try to reach a solution that works best for everybody. I'm just wondering whether Hamilton is willing to be more flexible on this rigid formula, because it seems like a lot of most of the numbers that you've set out here are generated from a formula that you've decided is the appropriate.
No, the formula was used as an assessment, but we didn't derive our budget from the formula. We built our budget, and then we went back and made sure it right-sized it. So let's not work it backwards, right? We just proved our
slide that gives a 3-year average.
Right. We just proved that what we did made sense.
We didn't pluck the number out of thin air.
Right. Yeah. Don't let us think we just came up with this magical 40-60. We just went and said this is our average, and it actually once we built the budget, it fit the average. And so that's when we feel good. We tell our citizens 40 cents out of every dollar pays for town services, and it's been doing that way for the last. How many? I mean,
at least since I've been here.
At least 8 years. So it's because we need to have data. Data points are important, right? And so if we're going to go back to our town and say, hey, we're going to spend 35 cents on every dollar you give to run the town services, we need a better story to understand from this committee how we convince our town that they think that's a good idea. So.
Well, let's continue that story. The 60-40 split really puts into perspective of what's important. When you look at it from the town's perspective, you're showing a 5.5% increase, 925, which basically leaves over out of revenue $100,490. So that's a 0.4 increase on the school department side when you look at it using this formula. Just go back to last year's FY26 final number, add in the difference between the Hamilton increase with this new formula minus revenues, leaves you $100,490 or 0.4% increase with the school department. If that continues forward next year, the same formula, just use an average number of $1 million increase again, you're looking at another shift in about the same amount of money, $900,000. So when you start to look at it from that perspective, the increases don't average out. You're looking at probably $500,000 in increase next year on the school department side, which is probably going to put us in an override again.
I hear what you're saying, Eric, I do. But in each of the last 3 or 4 years, the town has consistently cut its share out of the 40% and got to the point where we were under that last year. And other years we've been, more than that. We've continued to go in one direction, and we can't go that direction any longer. And if last year's cut is hurting us now going forward, it hurts what we have in free cash, what we can afford to spend on capital improvements, what we can afford to do in other non-recurring expenses. It hurts us. It will ultimately, if we don't address it, it will ultimately hurt us in the way we qualify for our bond rating. And that will hurt the schools too. Both towns have AAA bond ratings. That's important to protect. If I keep cutting into those things, you won't have the benefit of a AAA bond rating to help when you have projects to do. And that's something that we want to protect at all costs.
So can I just ask a question? Because I only speaking for myself. As I look at this, what I heard Ben saying is, I think the question that I'm not 100% sure, but I think this is what I am concerned about. And just to be clear, my concern is I'm not thinking to myself, I think Hamilton needs to cut this budget that's not what I'm saying or thinking. What I'm questioning, I think, is what Ben was trying to allude to, is that Wenham sort of parsed it out a little bit differently, in which, and I guess what I'm asking is, if this amount of money, the budget that you've just presented and the budget that the school committee has just presented, so on the Hamilton side, if this amount of money is the money that is needed to provide the services that are needed for the citizens of Hamilton, the fire, the police, the roads, the trash, and the schools, if that's the money that's needed, I'm not meaning to exclude Wenham, but I guess what I'm curious about is, why wouldn't it be just presented in that way? Like, here's the town budget, here's the school budget, we're $1.7 million off, and we're gonna need an override. My question is, why is that being presented as the schools need an override? Like, I think it really is just messaging. It's not, I am in no way saying, oh, Hamilton needs to cut things out of their budget. I believe you that these are these are the things that are needed in order to provide what our citizens need.
Yeah, I mean, we provided lots of charts and graphs. You can choose to pick the ones that say that, or choose to pick the ones that don't. I mean, we just laid it out different ways. It's not an argument. It's not an argument we're making. It's just we laid it out different ways to look at it from different angles to see how we could approach it. But don't think that we have an argument or a presentation yet. We have lots of charts and graphs that show it one way. We just had to look at it different ways to see if it made sense. Work with FinCom, work with top. So yeah, I don't think we're there. Your conclusion, I think you're too quick to the conclusion. I think we're just presenting facts and data points and trends, and we'll figure out how we present it to the town when it's the right time to do it. But we're not there yet.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's fair. Yeah, because I will just say, to Eric's point, like, I did that similar kind of math and was like, so it looks like the town is kind of saying to us, you're allowed a 0.4% increase, because otherwise you're going to be in And like, that's, again, I'm not saying that this $1.7 million is not real. It is real. Like, it's real. Like, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just, and so again, I think this is more message and than it is, I don't think we have a numbers issue. I think it's a messaging concern, like that from my point of view, I only speak for myself, but from my point of view, looking at that number and sort of saying, okay, there's, that this is what the, new added revenues are this year, and what's the difference available for the schools, and the difference available for the schools is about $100,000.
I mean, again, messaging matters, so you're pointing that out.
Right.
We didn't say what's available for the schools. We said 60% of our revenues will go to the schools. 60% of revenues is the number it is. That we have bent over backwards in past years to cut ourselves to give you more. We're saying that kind of has to stop. That's all we're trying to say. Yeah, kind of, we have. I mean, yes.
Never asked
Okay.
you to make a cut, ever. You ask us to make cuts. We never ask either of you to make cuts. We would never do that.
So, I mean, it's semantics, right? If you ask us for more money and we don't want to have an override, then we have to make a cut to accommodate your request.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
that's
but I mean,
kind of,
like,
that's why we're having
the
this
same
conversation now.
thing.
Because we've needed to have this conversation
Yeah,
for 7 years, and we haven't had it. We've avoided it by making cuts. And we've got to have this conversation. Right? Because at the end of the day, the town's foundation budget starts with assessing revenues based on what our current revenue is and what we can legitimately project how it will increase next year. Right? We start our budget process there. Every year that we try to balance our side of the budget and your assessment comes in higher than we can afford in that number, we've made cuts to accommodate your assessment. We can't keep doing that. The school department doesn't build their budget the same way. You actually start out with, this is what we need. You just extrapolate out all the multipliers based on the number of staff you have and the buildings and increases in utilities, and you present us a final budget number and say, this is your assessment. The towns can't do it that way. We have to start out guessing what our revenue is and setting the budget that we then have to prove to the state we can live within. So if you're not looking at the revenue picture when you set your budget, you're disadvantaging both of us.
So I really do understand what you're saying, and I do want to say that when we work on the budget, we do talk about, I mean, just like you do, we talk about what was last year's budget, what are the revenues, what are the anticipated revenues, and we do work with that. I mean, that's, like, I hope that, I mean, I know, because I see that you do a combination of things, as do we, talking about what do our citizens need, what do we really need to provide for our citizens, and what is the reality of what money is available. And I would like to say that you do that, we do that, so does Wenham. Like, so, as a citizen, I don't want the towns to cut beyond providing the services. This is me speaking as a citizen, but I'm also on the school committee, and what I'm saying is that, from my opinion, I want both towns and the schools to have tight, lean budgets. But if it comes to a point where a town, like Wenham just said to us, they're going to cut and be tight and lean, and they're going to get down to it, and there's going to come a point where they're going to say, this is it, we're going to need an override, because cutting beyond this is going to prevent needed services. And I guess, like, as a citizen, that's what I want to hear. If you're getting to a point where the cutting is so dramatic that you feel like we're not serving our citizens, the citizens deserve to hear that.
Right. So we're trying to figure out, I mean, I guess, in talking to the select board and the FinCom, trying to figure out what is that point, right? And
Yeah.
the way we came to was looking at historic value. What does the town traditionally spend? And within 0.5% here or there, up and down the line for the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And it's right around 60% for education, Hamilton, Wenham, and NSAT, and 40% for the town. And if we try to live in, we're at the point where we could live at 40%. We don't need an override to be able to manage what we provide for town services beyond the 40%, our 40%. You want us to message it differently, we can talk about it with the select board and the FinCom, but we're trying to show, we're trying to explain what it takes. And nothing's been voted. It's not a final budget yet. It's not a final determination that we're going in this direction. But, and I've always said that we understand we got a bottom line budget from the school department, and we do our best to manage that. It's not our job to tell you how to manage your budget. It's our job to figure out what we can afford, and then if not, it has to go to the voters.
Yep. No, and that's the reality of
So
regional school districts.
That's kind of where we are, so.
Okay. Other people have questions?
Yeah, I have a question, actually. So on page 6, the capital improvement plan,
Yep.
I see 1.2 million there for a number of items. So that's included, and that's part of the,
So it's included in the overall budget, but it's not included in the operating budget. In the capital improvement this year, too, the 1.25 is being paid for through a number of sources. Again, when we go back to talking about our financial policies suggest that we spend at least $1 million a year on capital improvements. We've typically, prior to last year, spent $1 million or more out of free cash. Last year, we only spent $767,000 and did not meet our financial policy on capital improvements. This year, we're going to meet it, but as you'll see in that spreadsheet, we're still only spending $866,000 out of free cash. We're going to repurpose some previously appropriated funds. That was money that was in past years put aside for capital improvements. Those projects have completed, and not all the monies were spent. So we're going to recapture that and ask to spend that as part of our capital plan. And then there's $280,000 in our water department, because those capital improvements are in the water department, and they're rightfully spent there.
Yeah, none of this affects the 27 tax rate, right? It's all paid for from monies that's already been collected.
Yeah, and none of that money, none of that 1.25 comes from money that would be raised in taxation in FY27.
So it comes from free cash or
free cash,
other
retained earnings, other leftover. So it wouldn't affect the tax rate, or 2.5%.
Do you know how much, well, I guess it doesn't, how much do you have in free cash? Like, what's in the free cash?
So there is a slide. Vinny's got it up. He anticipates your every move, Dana. Vinny is worth his weight in gold. So as you can see, in October 28th of this year, the town had certified in free cash $3.714 million. At the special town meeting, we appropriated $26,000 for unpaid bills. That left us a balance of $3.688. Our free cash reserve policies require us to set aside 5%. That's our floor. That's our floor. We can't spend that 5%. So that takes out $2.062 million of the $3.688. We have available to spend in FY25 $1.626 million. We're proposing to spend $866 on capital, $125 in OPEB. That is something we do every year. $250 to the capital stabilization would be a transfer. That's not really a spend, it's just moving it from one savings account into the other. Our capital stabilization policy requires us to have a certain percentage of, what's the word I'm looking for? Capital finance, and we are under it because a number of years ago, the town meeting voted to buy a new fire truck with the capital stabilization money. So we now have to refund.
So you're refunding it.
And it's a little bit over every year. So $250,000 is what we're using this year. There'd still be another $300,000 for FY28 in order to get that fund fully funded again. And then there's $150,000 in here for a file digitalization project. It's a one-time project. It's probably not a one-time expense. It'd probably take 2 or 3 years to fully digitize all the records of town.
But it will eventually fall off.
It would all eventually fall off. So it wouldn't be a recurring expense annually going forward. It'd be 1 or 2 years, 3 years at the most, and we'd hopefully have everything that we needed digitized by then. So that would leave us, under the proposed budget at this point, only $235,000 above our floor, which is, as I pointed out to Select Board last night, kind of a really tight spot to be in. That's, as you guys know with boilers and stuff, that's, one large building maintenance project and we're cleaned out.
We know, yeah. Vinny has a question.
I had 2 questions. One is only about this, so I'll ask.
Can you, I don't know if everyone can hear you or not. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't claim to know how the town budget works. I think I know how the school works. But anyways, our limit on E&D is 5%. Is that the same as free cash for you guys?
No, so this is more running towards maintaining our bond rating and things like that, right? So in order to show that we're a good credit risk, we have to have a certain amount of our annual operating budget set aside in stabilization and free cash accounts. The industry norm or the best financial practices that the state released back in 2014 or 15, Jeff, help me out, it was 2014, 15, under the Governor Baker, was that it should be 5% of your operating budget should be held in free cash, and 5%, at minimum 5%, should be held in stabilization. We have a general stabilization operating fund, or general stabilization fund and a capital stabilization fund. The general stabilization fund is at 5%. In other years, when we fall below that because the operating goes up, we make a similar free cash expenditure or transfer into the general stabilization. We don't need to do that this year. As I noted, the capital stabilization fund we have to make a transfer into this year, and the free cash is once we get our free cash certification and we project our annual operating budget for the next year, we take that number right out of the free cash number and say that's the number we can't touch.
So it's not a 5% cap like ours works. You can still save that $235 that's left over.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not exactly like ours.
Because ours is a little bit, it sounds like it's the opposite, that ours, it sounds like you are saying you are required to hold 5%, but you can have more than that.
Right.
Whereas ours, we are only allowed to hold up to 5%. So it's a little bit, it's different.
But partly it's due to the fact that we tax and you don't.
Yeah, no, it's just different. It's just
the
good
state
for
and
us
the
to
bond rating
understand.
agencies
Yeah.
want us to do that to maintain our financial stability.
No, it's just good for us to understand that, because my understanding of free cash and E&D was that they're fairly similar, but this is an area of difference. That's just important for us to understand.
So Joe, just in response to some of the comments, I think what we should do is because I think it'll show the similar argument we're making. I think we should take this sheet that Wenham did and mimic it with our numbers, right? And show that, because they show reduction needed at the town side, 232, reduction on the school side, 592. I think if we did that formula with our numbers, I think it would show what we're trying to argue. So I think we could use that. So I think it would be helpful if we did the same format, because it's hard to look at budgets in two different formats. So I think we can, within the next couple of days, maybe you can share that spreadsheet and we can fill it out.
Wendy?
I don't think it'll be that difficult. So just based on 26.
Right.
Just based on 2 years, but just 26 and 27, so.
We can do that. We can do that.
Do you have another question? Oh, more questions. Go ahead.
If somebody's ahead
Jump
of me,
right in.
if someone's ahead of me, go ahead. Was there anybody else?
What was that?
Was anybody ahead of me? If so,
No, I don't. I think Vinny has another question, but go ahead.
So I guess this is sort of probably mostly a question directed to the school committee, and it's about messaging, because I'm not sure if we have one more joint meeting with all of us, but even if we have more than that, we should start thinking about messaging, I think. And I understand that maybe that there is another school budget that comes back, or there might not be, and that remains to be seen. And certainly Hamilton has made that request. But is this sort of along the right track of how this should be explained, the budget increase? So I'm just running some quick numbers, and a 2.5% increase over the FY26 school budget is about $973,000 by my calculations. And the salary increases and from the new teacher's contract, which should be defended, I think, I'll get to that in a second, but that plus the health insurance increases, which I think everybody in the United States understands, have shot up considerably, as they always do, but even more so this year. Those two things alone, according to the superintendent's summary sheet here of the summary of changes over $85,000, amounts to $1 million. See, my math isn't so great, but 965 plus 599. So let me just 965 plus 599. So 1.564 million. In other words, well above the 2.5% increase. So isn't like the right way to explain this to the voters that something like, look, everyone watched what happened in surrounding towns with teacher contract disputes that resulted in very costly and divisive strikes in a couple of towns near us. The Hamilton Wenham School District was able to avoid that, came up with a contract that everyone agreed was fair and was not exorbitant. So we all understand that that is resulting in contractual increases that can't be avoided. And health insurance is going up $600,000, which everybody understands. So already we're in a situation where just to meet those two large contractual obligations, the school budget needs to increase by something like 3.5% or whatever it is. So just to make everyone understand that the 2.5% levy limit is not practical for this year. And I don't say that in a cavalier sense. I understand that there's a lot of debate and persuasion that will have to occur with taxpayers, and there are many taxpayers who will say, I'm sorry, I can't support this. I can't afford any more of my property taxes. But isn't that sort of the place to start in terms of what we're dealing with for fixed contractual increases, and then trying to work together to figure out, okay, how are we going to raise the money to meet those contractual increases and the other things that our school committee has decided are necessary to not result in a significant degradation of education in the district. To me, that's the way to message it, and to have graphics that show those numbers so that it will be easy to understand why an override is needed. But I'm interested in what the school committee members think in terms of messaging that, because I think that's a slightly different message than what I've been hearing from Hamilton so far. And I recognize that you've very fairly said that there's more discussion to occur, but to me that's a better message than one that sort of talks about who's living within their means and who isn't, and sort of putting a stake in the ground on a formula.
I mean, I think you're mixing up our presentation with our argument to the public. So once again, you're going 2 steps ahead of where we're at. So appreciate the comments, but I don't think you're interpreting our presentation correctly.
But we need to look.
Yeah.
We need to look 1, 2, 3, and 4 steps.
I totally agree with you, but let's not put words in our mouth before we even got them out, okay?
No, but we're here in a public meeting. Maybe one of the last opportunities we have to be together to talk about this. So it's not premature to try to at least have a discussion about what the message
I would love to have a discussion. Just don't put words in our mouth. That's all I'm asking to do.
Let me try a little different. So one of the things that I was thinking about was what Eric had said too about only 0.4 increase over last year. I think one of the problems that we get wrapped up in is looking at what's our increase over last year, as opposed to looking at what's the percentage of the budget that we can afford to spend on these different things, right? The reason we're putting it this way is because last year, for instance, the school district didn't get just 60%. In education, we spent over 61% on schools. Some of that was NSEP, but most of it was Hamilton Wenham. And so if we then just took them getting 61% last year, and then we just gave them 60% of this year's revenue, they're adding 60% onto a higher number already. So we're continuing to have a diminishing portion of the budget for the town just by doing that. So the idea was to look at it more holistically. What is the right, and maybe 60% is wrong. The select board and FinCom can push back and tell, I have to look at it differently than you do, Ben or Dana. I'm not an elected official. I'm here appointed to look at the landscape we're operating in. Right now, in the state of Massachusetts, we can raise our budget 2.5% plus new growth without an override vote. So this is the budget we can afford without an override vote. It is $1.7 million less than what's been requested so far. But if I look at the 60-40 split, the town isn't contributing to that $1.7 million. We can change that conversation. We can talk about the messaging. I have never said that the school department or the towns won't need an override to support the school department. The towns will need an override to support the school department.
Right, and we all agree with that.
But I don't think it's unfair to say, budgets are a reflection of the community's values. What is the value that we place on the town services that get provided? We absolutely understand the value of the schools. Everybody that's here understands that. We're trying to be fair and say, historically, the town of Hamilton at least, has spent 60% of its budget within a percent here or there. That number can move, we can talk about it. But we need it as a starting place. That's a starting place.
Can I say something?
Sure.
We haven't even voted on the budget yet. I think we need to hear from Vinny, but we, are you presenting? But I agree with you about the messaging, like overall, like we do need to start thinking about it. But to me, I think we still need to discuss it as a committee.
All three entities.
Yeah. But
all
we
these are
still haven't voted on it. Like we're all still, it's still a lot of things up in the air. But I agree that the messaging is going to be incredibly important. And what I don't want to happen is people to think it's like the school versus Hamilton or like the school versus Wenham. Because that's kind of what I am. If I was a member of the public listening to this, and I'm not blaming anyone here, and I'm blaming me just as much as this, that's what I would be thinking. And we're very easy targets. All of you are very easy targets as well. So we're very easy villains, and the school district, for some reason, is very easy to villainize. So the only thing I'm concerned about when we get to messaging is that we all can agree on some kind of message, and that, you know, we're going to disagree on various points, but I hope that we can, like you just said, present it in some way to the public to help them understand why the increases might be what they are. This is what's necessary to fund the town. Like, I would fight for the town budget if that's what's necessary to fund the town of Hamilton. I'm not an expert on I'm not a town manager. So I look to you, and I look to the select boards to tell me. So I think if we think of it that way, if we just sort of, if we have the messaging that this is what's best for the towns and the schools and the town services, and it's all wrapped up together, and this is what we need to be a community, a safe community, a healthy community, an educated community. This is what we need. To me, I think there's no really other way forward. And I know Megan wrote an amazing op-ed that did not get published, but she posted it on her Facebook page that I would encourage everyone to read, that I thought was great around messaging those kinds of exact topics, explaining to the public very clearly, like, this is the reality of healthcare, this is the reality of salaries, this is the reality of XYZ.
Right. And trash contracts, which
And
we've
trash
learned
contracts.
about, like that was a really difficult, really important, really difficult.
And look at Beverly.
Right.
With their trash contract, they didn't have trash pickup for 6 months.
Yeah,
or
exactly,
something.
really difficult. All right, I do know, I want to have everybody, and we do remember, we are still going to have, the school committee is going to, Vinny's still going to present the school committee budget. Yep, go ahead. Yeah, definitely please talk into the mic so we can.
I know we're going to be talking about messaging later, but when we get the presentation from the school board, I think it'd be helpful to address what the future looks like in terms of long-term planning, and I'm biased. I've been in this long-term planning thing for many decades. And I think if you look back over the statistics for the change in the school budget, it's been quite variable. I mean, it was very low 23 to 24. The average comes out to about 5%. And inflation, over that same period has come out something a little bit less than 3. So as Ben's pointed out, you're set up for immediately, by the way the state law applies, if you've got 3% inflation and you got a 2.5% cap, you've got to either bring a lot of new business into town so you can tax them, or you've got a problem. So I think it'd be helpful if we had some input on what the future looks like. We know that you can't forecast perfectly, but are we talking about continuing what's currently been going on versus something coming down to a lower rate that we could take a look at in terms of whether we're going to need to have an override in the two towns? And I guess the other thing I would add is, we've been looking at, on the FinCom for 2 years now, at how education costs are correlated with median household income. And there's a high correlation. This is what's spent, not the net after you get money back from the state. And that reflects values in terms of what people are interested in. Do you want better teachers with higher salaries? Do you want lower classroom ratios? Do you want smaller schools? All of those things contribute to what it costs on a per student basis. So that, I think, in terms of our messaging, I think that's also something that might be relevant.
All right, are we ready to hear, Vinny, and then, yes, and then after that is, maybe we'll be ready to hear from you. Yes.
Sadly, one thing I always do when I'm done building the next budget is try to roll it forward and build the next one. So I'm just trying to, my question really is around 28. So let's just say this all goes forward and the override passes for 1.7 million. That makes your new number the 45.6. If you then apply a 60/40, doesn't that mean you then get 40% of the override that was declared the school's issue?
I think that one of the things that I want to stress is that the 60/40 is an argument that we're making, or not an argument we're making, it's a
The trend that
it's a trend that we've identified and we're tracking, and it's a way to explain our point, right? I will say this, I think it definitely hasn't happened in the last 7 years that the school department got less than 1 year than it got the year before. So I don't think that's a concern. If you're projecting out that we're going to take more money because you got an override passed in 28 and 29, obviously I don't think that's how it would work. But again, this whole conversation around 60/40 is a starting point for conversation to talk about different ways to look at it. Because in our view, the way we've been looking at it hasn't been working. So we need to look at it some way. We need to come up with some agreement on that. And it's a number to start the conversation with. I'm eager to have more conversations, but where we were when we met at the first Quintuple Boards meeting on our town side and where we are now are two different things.
Yeah.
We've come a long way from them to kind of reduce what we needed. But I acknowledge what you're saying. A $1.7 million hit to this, to your budget would be devastating.
Well, it's not 1.7. In order to get Hamilton
I understand.
1.7, we're
Right.
well over 2 million.
It would be
in order
devastating
to
for you.
get-
And in order for Hamilton to share in that, if we took 40% of that hit, that would be equally devastating to town services. So we got an existing set of operating conditions that we have to work within together. Ben brings up good points. What about the 2.5? What at the state level? There's bills. I don't think they're going to get through this year in time to help us, but there's bills to repeal 2.5. I don't know that that's going anywhere this year, but this is all a result of the existing financial condition around us, right? Inflation's been on the rise for the last 3 years. It's affected everybody that lives in our towns. It's finally coming to roost in our budgets. Unfortunately, we have to have this conversation with the voters at the same time they're already feeling the pinch everywhere else. So that means whatever we ask for, and in terms of an override, has got a legitimate chance of being failed. So we have to figure out really what that real number is that we need and ask for it. And I would also suggest that we need to look at we need to look at stratifying it or layering it so that we ask multiple questions, not one. Don't ask for one lump sum money. Say this much to do this much to do that, this much to do the whole thing, and give voters the choice. Because if we give them just a yes or no choice, I think we're all going to be in trouble.
What do you mean? How can we give them like a multiple budget?
Yeah, so there are plenty of examples around. We can get one for you, but there's plenty of examples of other towns that do menu overrides. So you have a menu, it can be as low as 3 things or as many as 12 things. Years ago, for instance, I know the town of...
We finish the presentations and then have discussions?
What do people think?
I will look that up. I didn't know you could do menu overrides.
All right. Okay. Hamilton, you good if we do the school presentation?
We're good?
Pretty good? To you, Vinny.
Thirsty. dry out.
I misread the room or what? I said,
No.
I will try to be quick for everyone. Sorry, my PowerPointer died. Thank you guys all for coming tonight. Obvious thanks to Eric Tracy, our superintendent, my entire school committee for working through the budget process, and obviously both select boards, FinComs, town managers, administrators, and their whole finance team for helping us through the 27 budget cycle. Obviously, we're here to review.
Vinny, I'm just going to stop. Can everybody hear him? Like, you all good?
Yep. Obviously, we're here to review where the school district stands for our FY27 budget request. As you all recall, when we met back on November 19th, the original preliminary FY27 town assessment budget recommendation came in at $42.9 million. This represented an increase of $4 million over the prior year, or roughly 10.32%. When Eric and I presented that budget to the school committee, there really was a lot of conversation around the level of increase and how they did not feel comfortable with that level. So they asked Eric and I to go back and introduce some reductions to them. Eric and I went back and on December 8th presented an updated preliminary budget that incorporated reductions of around $682,000 that lowered that 10.3% year over year by reduction of about 1.7% after that. However, after presenting to that, they were still had concerns about the overall level of increase. So they asked us to go back a second time and implement a second round of reductions. On December 18th, we went ahead and did that second round and added up another $264,000 in reductions from the updated preliminary budget, which represented another 0.68% decrease. When you add both the first round of reductions and our second round, overall the school district dropped just under $1 million in assessment reductions from our preliminary budget that we presented in November, all the way up through our tentative budget in January that was passed on January 2nd. This represented an overall drop of about 2.5% from that preliminary budget that we represented. So what did we do with that $950,000? There was a lot of difficult conversations that we had with the school committee and even difficult conversations we had with the leadership team and a lot of hard decisions we had to make. Obviously, some of the things were updates just to our regular projections on both sides of our ledger. We start building the budget in mid-October to early November. Fast forward 3 months later, obviously we're going to have changes to some of our projections. We get updates from the state. We get updates from the Essex Retirement Board. So we work in all of our projections and update both our revenues and expenditures. But the most difficult decision was how to reduce that overall number. We presented to the school committee a total reduction of 7.44 FTEs from that original preliminary budget that we presented in November. Overall, those 7.44 FTE reduction equated for a reduction of $476,000 to our FY27 budget. One thing I want to note is when you fast forward that to FY28, those savings will be even larger, because for FY27, we incorporated full unemployment costs for all 7 of those people. So that incorporates about another $120,000 that will roll forward into 28, but for 27, it's roughly $476,000. Another difficult conversation we had was around athletic user fees. Ultimately, our preliminary budget and what we do for level service this year, the school district contributes 55% of the total cost of athletic user fees. As part of our reduction process, this number got moved to 50-50. Although it sounds like a 5% might not be a lot, When you look at it from the student side, from the family side, that's a 12% increase in user fees before you even roll the budget forward. So that 12% only represents what the district is not contributing to the user fees next year and does not incorporate on normal year-over-year increases. So even though it might be coming off our budget side, families will still be making up that payment. Another difficult decision was on the elimination of one of our late buses. We currently run 2 late buses that service many of our needier kids that stay after school for extra services or stay for after school clubs. We run 2 buses currently, one for all students in Hamilton, one for all students in Wenham. In an attempt to meet our budget goals, we are eliminating one of those buses. We don't know the exact consequences, but we can only imagine that there will be less children staying after school and participating in these activities because they will not have transportation home, or they will not want to stay on that long bus ride that now has to go through both communities instead of just one. We also have implemented reductions in our professional development for all of our instructional staff. Although this won't be a direct impact on children, it does impact their learning environment because we are now putting forward instructional staff that might not have gone through the most rigorous professional development that we would have liked to have put them through. We are also eliminating or removing our weight room supervision. Currently, we requested to have additional staff be in the weight room after hours for anyone to come in and train and lift weights and use our new weight room. Because currently the only people that can go use it is our athletes when there is adult supervision, when there are coaches there. We do not have anyone outside of those hours in our weight room, and we do not allow students to be in there without supervision. This will be removed, and we will not have those services in 28. Lastly, we did reduce some of our additional after-school tutor hours to help meet that budget goal. Even after presenting all of these reductions, the roughly 2.5% or $1 million reduction, if you watch the school committee meeting from January 8th, there was still a lot of hesitation on where this budget is falling. So they had asked us at that meeting to present to them a 3rd round of reductions. They have not seen those. It is a public document on the exhibit, but we have not presented it to them. They will see that tomorrow night. And review it and kind of take that under consideration. One thing I would like to mention is we feel confident that we will be able to handle the current 7.5 roughly FTE reduction without implementing class sizes. If we go deeper into this 3rd round, there will be a lot more things that are affected by this. This will affect class sizes, especially at the secondary level, and will implement a more drastic round of reductions if we go into this 3rd round. We are currently not there yet. We are at our tentative budget, which just from a starting point, if you look at our gross budget, year over year, it is a 5.7% increase, and this does factor in the approximate $500,000 for the additional maintenance and the roughly $300,000 for capital stabilization. So if you back both of those out, we are now more near the 4.2% gross year over year. However, your assessments are a lot different, and that's because our net budget is actually going up $3 million, or roughly 7.8%, and as everyone knows, that's because of the E&D situation from FY26, which is where the shortfall in our revenue comes from, which is why our gross budget is lower than our net. It's usually the exact opposite. Usually our revenues lower our budget, but this year it's the reverse, again, because of that E&D. So what does that equate to for both communities? For Hamilton, as we stand for our tentative budget, their tentative budget is coming in at $27.5 million, which is an increase of $1,851,000 or 7.21%. For Wenham, their year-over-year increase would be $1,218,000 or roughly 9.18. This is both operating and debt included in that number. We do have our final budget vote on February 12th. There is only one other meeting for the school committee prior to this meeting. That's tomorrow night, where we're presenting the third round of reductions. So really stay tuned for that February 12th vote to see where the budget goes from tonight. I tried to be very quick. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Vinnie, for the school committee?
Yeah, I have a couple. On an approximate basis, what percentage of the total costs of the budget are governed by collective bargaining agreement?
You mean what percentage of our budget is covered by staff or?
Yeah, collective bargaining agreement. In other words, it's contractually already agreed to.
I would say about 55%, but that's before benefits.
Oh, okay.
If you factor in benefits, you're up around 74, I believe.
Okay. And then, again, speaking purely hypothetically in terms of messaging, which I guess is a topic today, if for some reason the two towns came back and said, we're not supporting an override, you need to cut the budget, it's my understanding that the way the collective bargaining agreements work, you can't go back to the staff and say, everybody take a 10% cut. All you can do is cut FTE. Am I looking at it correctly?
You could cut more than just FTEs, but yes, the bargaining unit does not have to agree to a reduction in.
You could ask them, but they could say no, at which point in time, which they probably would, at which point in time your only option is reduction of FTE to make meaningful. I'm just trying to understand how this process would work.
Yes, it would be FTEs, but not to paint a dire picture. The amount that we would have to reduce to get Hamilton under that amount would almost close one of our buildings. So to say it would only be FTEs, that's not correct, because we would be looking at a lot of other things other than just FTEs, but the bulk of it would certainly be FTEs, yes. It's
Okay.
not just FTEs, that's all I'm trying to explain.
I just don't want people to have the impression that you can simply go back and say, everybody take a 2% pay cut and get to that's all I'm trying to pose, is that there are restrictions vis-a-vis collective bargaining agreements that make this an unwieldy process in the event that you had to implement it.
Yep, you're almost talking about $2.8 million.
Okay.
I can't really even fathom what that would do to the district.
Other questions?
Well, I think it's important to note that, to your question, what the impact looks like is every $500,000 is about 8 positions.
Thank you. That's helpful.
And I'll just add to that. So we have not a huge increase, but we have an increased enrollment. And even the tentative budget that you have has decreased staff. So I just want, I think our increase is 39 students, and we have 7.3, correct? Reduced
Year over
FTE.
year is 6.11 if we're going to get technical.
Okay, but reduced, we have, in this budget that we've presented, there are fewer staff and more students.
Can you provide a little bit of information on the capital stabilization and also the security vestibules? I guess, what is the policy around capital stabilization? What is that line item? And then maybe where we stand on the vestibules.
We currently don't have a policy around capital stabilization. We just fund it to whatever level we feel is appropriate within the budget. The security vestibules are not within the capital stabilization fund. We're actually requesting at the moment within our tentative budget that be funded through normal appropriations, not through a capital stabilization.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
Yes, but so the capital stabilization zone line item about $316,000, and essentially there's no money in that fund now, and you'd be putting it there, or
We have been putting it there. I don't want to quote the exact number that's right there. The school committee did just vote to transfer 1.7 to pay for the athletic turf field, to pay down that borrowing. If I had to give you a number off the top of my head, I think we're around 700,000 right now. I can certainly look it up after and get you the number, but I think that's what our balance is, ballpark right now.
Okay, so I guess on the school fields, I guess I'm now a little bit confused. I thought that was paid for by a bond issuance.
Only portion. It was roughly, round numbers, it roughly cost 13.5 million at the end. 1.7 was paid by the school. It's the towns as well. Everything comes to the towns, but through the school's capital stabilization fund, roughly another 1.6 million was from donations from the community. 1.2 million was from your CPC funds, and the remaining roughly 7 million is through assessments through the next 7 years. I believe.
So maybe coming back to capital stabilization, so we'd be left with, you said there's about $700,000 left-ish.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to get back up $2 million with this $300,000 you're putting back into it? Is that?
That would get us to about $1 million, but there's not like there's a goal there to get to $1 million.
Okay.
That number you see for capital stabilization is equal to our E&D offset. So in your packet, if you look at the operating budget assessment, there's 2 lines for E&D. There's one that's returned to the town for roughly $774,000. That has been with us since COVID, the 2021 budget. And then the all remaining funds is that 316. That is completely offset by one-time expenses, which is our capital stabilization transfer.
Okay, thank you.
I
That's
can
helpful.
explain it different if you.
I think that makes sense. Thank you.
Can I say something to that? We heard, as a committee, loud and clear from the communities when the consolidated elementary school failed, that they are very interested in us putting more expenses into capital and maintaining the 3 elementary schools, the middle school and the high school, and putting more into renovations and upgrades and keeping the schools. So I think, we want to be responsive to that, and I just wanted to say that that was a big piece of our budget consideration, was listening to what the voters have been telling us.
And maybe a follow-up on that. My understanding from the last meeting was there's also going to be an override related to the middle school roof. Is that
High school
still, is that still planned? Where does that stand?
High school roof.
Sorry, a roof.
A roof.
It's a debt exclusion.
Debt exclusion, okay, so that is, okay.
But yes, that's important.
I just wanted to check, you were saying that the number of students has gone up. Is there somewhere where you've estimated the cost per student? And I'm wondering how that's changed across time, and if you're comparing that with other schools in the area to kind of see where Hamilton Wenham compare.
So the comparisons are done on the Department of Education website, 2 years behind, as Finn and I have been wrestling with, several other people, I'm sure, just trying to nail down what the actuals are is really difficult. The state is always 2 years behind in their calculations, so we're kind of relying on their data to be the calculation, and that way you have the same calculation across school districts. So right now we're, I think, 2 years behind, right, Finn?
Yeah, so the FinCom is definitely interested in this particular metric, right? And as you heard from Bob a second ago, right, about trying to figure out where the correlation is, right? And is Hamilton Wenham School District, reasonably spending money and, and reasonably expecting funds from the towns. And the question, as the FinCom always is wrestling with, is how do we come to the decision to support the budget, right? And so benchmarking is the best thing that we can think of, right? So when we're asking questions about, all right, what is the gross cost to educate a student? How is that different across towns? Which towns should we be comparing ourselves against, right? And then, as you were talking about with the state funding, you end up from the gross cost to educate a student to how much does it cost per capita in these towns for their portion of the funding, right? So that benchmarking project is really I think where we're going to be relying on as a finance committee to come up with our recommendation to support the budget proposed by the select boards, combining the town and the school district, right? So We've done a whole bunch of work. We're not ready to present it publicly because we're still checking numbers. We're trying to make sure that it holds up to scrutiny. The problem, as Eric was saying, is, the DESI website is 2 years behind, right? And there's been a lot of changes to districts in that 2-year time period, and we're now trying to forecast the third year. And so, DESI does the work to try to make things comparable. We're going to have to figure out a way to extend past that, and that's the challenge. And going into all these different towns and trying to find a number that is comparable is pretty difficult.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note the calculations have been done to date. It puts Hamilton-Wenham right in the middle when you're looking at cost per student based on the size of school comparison. So the number of metrics that they're trying to pull into the calculation puts us dead center in schools that we've selected, mostly regional schools that are similar in size, but even that's difficult to do. There are not a lot of similar sized regional schools. So we do look at all of the numbers and really try to lean into some of the different metrics. The problem you run into is the variability between a statistical analysis of teacher salaries across multiple school districts over charts that are very different. So you're looking at step and scale charting of teacher salaries across 12 steps and maybe 8 or 10 columns, sometimes 12 columns, depending on degrees. And that's different for every single community, so it makes the comparative harder in a statistical analysis. I'm sure you can correct for variability, but that's really difficult when you're looking across 12, 15, 18 schools to nail down a number and say, okay, every regional school district, this should be roughly your per pupil spending cost. So I just think those are intricate pieces of the puzzle. There's also things like transportation. Transportation in Beverly is not required. In Hamilton-Wenham Regional and all regional school districts, it's required. So that's a cost that now differentiates between those per pupil expenses. So there's a lot of variable in there. That's the only thing I want to caution people about. And Finn and I have talked a lot about this. I know the FinComs have spent hours trying to figure out how to look at these different variables and make sense of them so that you could come up with some reasonable formula, but it has been proven to be very difficult.
Gary?
Yes, I think for the public, what you've heard here tonight is that both towns have done their usual budget process, very rigorous, and we're at a point now that any further cuts or not support will actually go into staff reductions or service to the public reductions. Likewise, the schools are in a position too that their costs have risen as much or more, and that we really need to get on to the messaging now to say that yes, we're expecting an override, we can work the numbers to the last day or whatever, but it looks like an override, and I think given the tone out there that we need to come up with a consolidated message as to how we convince the public that this is the essential budget that we need. And whether we do it by a stratified method where you say this is the absolute essential, and oh, by the way, that's warrant 1, and warrant 2, if you want that fire truck or the police position or whatever, then you're going to go into the override. So, but I think our main task going forward here is we know the staffs will work the budget to get down to the best numbers possible. But I think for the committees, the big challenge going forward until town meeting is to get the word out there and explain just why this is going to be an override year. And I think part of that is this is really into a place where we're now into true budgets. We've gone through COVID, we've gone through ARPA and all these strange things, but now we're back to really, we're on our own, and both towns, all the citizens need to decide just what level of services and quality of schools you want to afford in your tax base. But I think the committees here need to get that message out earlier rather than just before town meeting.
Yeah, I think a small group of people, like one person from each town, one person from the school committee, and somebody from the school should define what that messaging is. And we should define that, get everybody to agree to it, and then start putting that story out there.
I think that's a great idea. I'd also like to add, and I was talking about this with Eric and Vinny during our last capital planning and finance subcommittee meeting. Last year, for the annual town meeting, I was not on the school committee. I was part of the Building Bright Futures group, trying to get the word out there for folks to get out there and attend annual town meeting. I think as most folks in this room know, I have 2 very small children. My son is turning 2 in 2 weeks. My daughter is 3. It is very hard to commit the time on a Saturday morning to come to an annual town meeting and to vote in person. And we're gonna need attendance from people like me and people with older children who have activities to attend this meeting in person. So I wanna put this out there. I hope collectively as a group of the 5 boards, we can come together to figure out how do we eliminate barriers to attendance, right? How do we make it easier for everyone in town, not just parents, that's also other folks with other commitments, but how do we make it easier for people to come and show up?
So we did that last year.
Yeah, both times.
At Bucher, we had a special room where you could come in with your kids.
Oh, I did. I brought my kids. It was chaos. It was absolute chaos. It was chaos.
Well, that was
and I'll say,
our
and the
first time
babysitting
through.
that's provided, your child has to be 3 and they have to be potty trained. So that does leave out a huge population of parents with young children. So I'm just saying it's very difficult for parents of young children to attend.
If I can just weigh in one last thing for the public, everybody out there needs to realize that town meeting is the future of the both towns and the schools. And, there's hundreds of excuses as to why I can't get there, but folks, this is the most important decisions, and we're at a critical point here. You need to show up at town meeting.
Can you do mail-in?
No,
No.
it's against state law.
No.
It's not allowed.
No, it's a state law, and it has nothing it's not us deciding that.
Yeah,
It's-
town meeting is
required.
is required attendance in person.
And I just wanted to, this past town meetings, I do want to agree with Megan that we want to eliminate any possible barrier, and we did have some record-breaking numbers at town meetings, and both towns did make huge efforts to make accommodations for a wide variety across the
keep in mind, that was on a
demographics.
weeknight, right? We did a weeknight meeting. That was our large.
Say it again?
But even the Saturday.
Our weeknight meeting was also a very large meeting.
I'll just say,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be flip.
Yep.
Hamilton will make every effort we made last year, and if folks have other ideas for things we can do, let me know. We will do our best to make additional efforts. I agree with Dana. We had record attendance at the annual town meeting, and then I think we broke that record at the first special town meeting, and then we came real close to a record again at the second special town meeting. Surprisingly, not as many people showed up for the third special town meeting, but that's fine. We'll continue to make every effort we can to remove barriers. But Gary's also right, it does require a commitment from the voters.
Right, and
It's a two-way street. We do, and we will continue to do everything we can to make it easy, but it's...
And Rosie's not here, so I'm going to say it for her, that it's everyone, and she always mentions about making sure that the seniors are able to get to town meeting and making sure accommodations.
Yep.
So
And we've made sure to do that as well, so we'll
everyone
continue
needs
to
to
do
be
that.
able to,
Right.
all the barriers can be eliminated, should be.
I just wanted to ask a quick question. The school committee votes tomorrow night, or has a meeting tomorrow night, and then they vote on February 12th.
February 12th.
You don't currently have any meetings scheduled between tomorrow night and February 12th. Select Board is going to meet on February 2nd. I think we're talking about a small group getting together, as had been proposed by Peter, and we're going to try and tie that up tomorrow morning to have a meeting next week. I will talk to the Select Board if there's a necessity for the Select Board and the FinCom to have an extra meeting. I think we'll do our best to get them to do that. I hope the school committee will also keep an open mind to having an extra meeting if you need to. Hopefully, we'll have good news coming out of both tomorrow night and the 5 chairs meeting that we're trying to schedule behind the scenes right now.
We have a tentative meeting scheduled in case, right? February 8th or something?
After.
Oh, it's after.
And,
In case we do have.
Yes, we do.
well, and I will say, just on an additional vein, is that we do have tomorrow night's meeting has a public hearing ahead of the meeting on the budget. So it's an opportunity for the public. They can come to the meeting, they can write us an email, they can write all of us, everyone here, emails. We want to hear, what does the public have to say? That's an opportunity, and it's important in terms of the discussion and decisions being made.
I just wanted to acknowledge Representative Bowen, who's here, one of the Wenham state representatives, and thank her for attending. And Representative Bowen, I don't know if you wish to speak or not, but if you do, it sounds like we'll be wrapping up, but thank you for coming.
Welcome, thank you for being here. Do you have something to say? Grab a mic.
Mostly lurking in the corner, just to have a sense, I think it's clear to everyone that state funding is not going to change any of the numbers that you all are looking at, but we'll certainly start getting those numbers out with the governor's budget first. And so just wanted to sort of get the lay of the land and signal that I'm here both in person and by phone and by email with questions as they come up about how all these different pieces are going to work together. So thanks.
Thank you for being here. Other people have other questions?
It's not necessarily questions, but it goes back to Ben's comment about messaging, right? We've talked about all the numbers. Somebody suggested the messaging, but we haven't really got to it tonight. So is it going to be just the 5 chairs? Is it going to, who's going to organize the committee for the messaging? Because I think we should walk away from your understanding, because we obviously want to be work as a group, right? Tonight we presented our own budget, right? Moving forward, we've got to present a comprehensive budget, right? So tonight was an opportunity for us to sort of defend and represent our own budgets. Moving forward, we've got to work together and come up with messaging. So who's going to take the lead on that, and how are we going to set up that? We should walk away with an understanding of what that process looks like.
I don't think anybody here wants me to be that.
No, I think it's a good point, and I know all of us that are on all these boards and committees know that one of the big challenges is that you can't speak for the whole committee unless you know what the whole committee or board wants to say. So it is, it's not a perfect, like having the 5 chairs is a good starting place, but it isn't a perfect, because it often happens that you sort of say, well, okay, and yet I don't know what the entire committee wants, and so one of the things I'm thinking about in terms of like if the chairs are meeting on the 29th, one of the things is that in terms of messaging, we can talk about it here, but like at tomorrow night's meeting or in between, before your meeting, the chairs can get feedback from your committee about like, we can have a discussion here, and then is there agreement with that vision, on messaging? And
Dana?
if you have something to say, like to start it off, yeah, go ahead.
You don't want this room to do your messaging.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
I'll just say it again. Get somebody from Hamilton, somebody from Wenham, somebody from the school committee, somebody from the schools, and just have them write up messaging and then present it back to this group.
Exactly. I think we're on the same page. But I think we've heard some messaging here in this room that people have talked about, and eventually the committee and the boards have to be on board with the messaging. We can't.
And the last thing I'm going to say is, need to do it fast.
We're coordinating a
Need to
5
do
chairs
it
meeting
fast,
next week. Can we just start there?
so that we can start getting that message out through multiple means.
Yeah.
Yep.
The 5 chairs are meeting on the 29th. So
29th.
maybe so the homework is get some consensus from your board and come to that meeting prepared to talk about messaging is what I heard, and I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I heard, say if you're not, but what I heard is a desire for unified messaging. That like the desire is, I mean, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but that like if possible, we'd like to create messaging that is one message that would be not like a message that this group is saying one thing and this group is saying something else, but that like we're looking to create some sort of unified message. Does that seem accurate? Is that our goal?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a goal.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yep.
And Dana, one last thing. As part of that messaging exercise, they should also figure out what the objections are going to be and how to answer them.
Okay, so that brings up highlights a good discussion to have really quickly here. I referenced it earlier. You know, Vinny, Eric, Jeff, Steve, myself, and Wendy, you know, we're hired to do our job within an existing paradigm, and that's what we've tried to do. We've all made our cases for where we're at right now. That should force some decisions from the elected officials to what is it you want, elected and appointed, sorry, FinComs are appointed. What is it you want to do to change that message, change that environment? And that gives us our marching orders. As far as moving the question to the voters, that is again where the electeds and the appointeds, the residents in the room, you have to make that message. I can parrot what the select board and FinCom tell me to, but I'm not a resident here, I'm not a voter, I'm supposed to be impartial. I've made the case in the existing environment. To the extent that the boards tell me to change the environment, we'll go forward with that new message. Happy to do it. I've already told you that my personal opinion, my professional opinion is, we know the schools need an override. We know the town needs an override to support the schools, and potentially some stuff on the town of Hamilton side. We'll talk about that and figure out what that is. But the boards and committees that are here represented, and even those who aren't here, but will be at the next meeting, they need to, you know, be part of messaging this to the community, because the town administrator or superintendent can only say so much.
Yep.
It's an election question. That's for you folks.
Yep. Yes. Okay. Anybody else? You good?
Yeah.
All right. I guess nobody has anything else, we can
Adjourn.
adjourn one at a time.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
I think, I mean, we did the same thing, breaking it into buckets, and they kind of showed.
I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the Finance Advisory Committee for Wenham here at, what is it, 8:25? Like I hear a motion, got a second. Any discussion? We get no discussion, move to a vote. Vote aye. I see 5 ayes and none against, so we're closed. Thank you.
All right. School committee?
I move to adjourn the meeting at 8:25 PM.
Second by Amy Kumberger. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous of the 5 members present, and the motion passes. We are adjourned.
Take care of our own batteries now.
You guys